Here we go, another Parawinging Q&A. I was doing these Q&As weekly, but God, it's been really hard to get a weekly cadence on these videos. Been really busy with the podcast, and that's mainly why I'm just calling this now a Parawinging Q&A, not a weekly Parawinging Q&A. But before we get started with the questions, just wanted to let you know that the episode with Steve Tobis is now live. Steve has, he's been an early adopter of the Parawing, and he was able to downscale his boards really quickly, and he has so many tips about Parawinging in this episode that I really recommend you checking it out. So it's go to Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube and just search the Foil Rat Podcast. You'll find it there. And next week we're going to be dropping the episode with Dom Zimmerman. So Dom Zimmerman is the designer at Ozone. So he designed the Pocket Rocket, which everybody is really happy with. So if you're into Parawing design or anything like that, Dom Zimmerman from Ozone will come onto the podcast next, and that will drop next Monday. Before we get into the questions, one more thing. I ended up locking in my board. I was talking to all of the guests about which board to get, and I needed to just jump on something quick because I'm going to Hood River in July. So I ended up going with an Amos Cypher board, and that just launched. The Cypher board is really it's a shape that came from a beginner downwinding board, so longer boards, but they distill that into kind of a mid-length size. Now, I really like the shape, and I did a custom dimensions on it. They have production dimensions on the website. Can't remember what they are. I think they're around 6'0", and then they go down to a 5'6". And the one I went with ended up being a 5'8" by 20 wide, 4 3/8 at 65 liters. Now, I didn't want to drop the literage too much because I want to use this board in, more than just like 25 knots. And I'm not quite there yet with dropping it to all the way down to 50. And I'll see if I need to go there one day. But for now, I wanted a little bit more volume as well, because Hood River, even though the winds are honking, it's freshwater, different flotation there. So those are the dims I went with. All right, let's get into the questions because I don't want this to run too long. So first question from Greg Lloyd. Is a mid-length board advantageous over a traditional wing foil board in moderate to strong winds? Of the same size volume, the mid-length will be longer and more unstable. Once you're on foil, shorter is better. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't understand the massive migration to mid-length boards in stronger wind days. I'm sure the manufacturers love the trend. Anyone explain? So for me personally, the mid-length boards, it depends on what you want to do, right? I think the normal traditional wing-shaped boards, they're good if you're going to be jumping, if you're going to be doing any freestyle, that you need that surface area to land and then just pop out of the water as fast as you can. I feel that where the mid-lengths have really shined is, one, obviously in the ease of getting up, right? But what you're saying here, in moderate to strong winds, why are people still gravitating to these boards? And in my opinion, I would rather be in a mid-length even on a stronger day because they're more narrow. And being more narrow allows you to turn so much better. And because the mid-lengths, they also have the tracks quite, to not to the middle of the board, but they're not all the way to the back like the traditional wing boards are. You don't feel like you have too much nose. You have a lot of tail behind you. So when you're on it, it really feels like a similar size to what you're riding. Maybe it's like a 411 or a 5.0, but with the advantage of you being able to bank and turn a lot better without touching down, right? So a traditional wing board might be anywhere from 22 wide to 25, 26, right? That's really wide, especially if you're on a mast that's around 80, right? Which most people ride 80 to 85. I feel like with that kind of mass length, you still touch down a lot. So I would rather be on a mid-length board. And I think that's why, like, people feel that getting up is easier. Not everybody's doing backflips on the wing. So if you're not at that level, I don't feel like you need all that surface area. I think you'd be, and if you're like, if all you're doing is flanking the wing and riding the bumps, man, the mid-lengths shine really well on those kind of conditions. So in my opinion, the mid-length will kind of be the board for, I don't know, 60, 65, 70% of the wingers out there. And if you're really pushing freestyle, then I think you would prefer, a more traditional style of wingboard. He also mentioned here the stability. So the stability of a board, when you're talking about a mid-length board, I think is worth talking about this, because he has a point in saying that the traditional wingboard is more stable. The mid-lengths, I feel that there is a point where you go down in the width that you're not really gaining too much advantage. So prior to this new board that I got, everybody chiming in, hey, waves for everyone. Prior to this new board that I got, I was on a 511 by 18 wide at 85 liters, right? That was my like light wind wing board, and 18 wide is pretty narrow, especially for the days that are 25, 30 knots. And you're out and, there's swell everywhere. There might be ground swell with wind swell. There might be, cross swell. It becomes unstable. And that's why with my new board, I'm going 20 wide. I feel 20 wide gives me enough projection. There's enough speed to be gained. And I wanted to keep my board thin. I don't want something thick. So having that width allows you to distribute the volume very well along the board, so you keep a thinner board overall. So I agree with you that some mid-lengths might be going a little bit extreme in the width, and if you are in that camp maybe below 19, that's where I think it becomes unstable. 19 and a half, 20, I wouldn't go over 20. I think the sweet spot there is from 19 to 20 wide. That is a great mid-length board depending on the volume that you're using it for. But good question from Greg Lloyd here. Let's see who else. We got Damien 130970. Do you think it would be possible to ditch the board leash completely and body drag with the Parawing kite style? I guess relaunch may be tricky if you're away from the board. Absolutely not. It's very different to be body dragging with a kite that has lines that are 22 meters long, and you just using the Parawing that the power source is very close to you to body drag. It's not going to propel you as much as a kite, not even close. In fact, if you can try that, if you just are on the water, you're going to be holding the Parawing. You're almost going to be stationary. When you're doing your body drag on a kite, you also kind of work the kite a little bit. Sometimes you even loop the kite if you want to gain speed, like if the board's in front of you. But I highly recommend wearing a leash on the board, and I highly recommend not using a leash on the Parawing. For a number of reasons, but to answer your question, would it be possible to ditch the board leash and just body drag with the Parawing? No. I think you might find yourself in some shitty situations, especially if the Parawing is underwater and you need to relaunch it. It's so hard for you to be able to be kind of, neck deep in water and get enough height in your hands off the water to actually launch that Parawing. You would have to do it with one hand and slowly kind of get it up, or just let it sit in front of you and pull on the A lines, and that would go up. So it's an interesting question, because I think, you coming probably from a kiting background, you feel that would be possible, but unfortunately that would be a hard one to do. And I think that to just complete the thought, always have a leash on the board. I don't have a leash on the Parawing. I don't feel that I need one. I've let go of the Parawing so many times on the water when riding to do a swap. Like I just let go of my 4.2 and then I get the 3 out. Launch it, and then I just ride the 3, especially in a day that is, varying kind of winds, and I just ride around near the 4.2 so I don't lose it. But I don't feel like adding a leash would help me feel safe. In fact, if something happens to the Parawing, I want to ditch it and I want to leave. I want it to go away and not be anywhere near it. If you're learning, maybe that's a little bit different. Some people say, and I can see this, that if you do have a leash, it avoids some tangling. And I think that is true. So if you're a beginner or if you're just starting out, maybe just wear a leash. And 2 camps of thought here. You could either ride it on the brake line, so on the bottom lines, and then when you let go, the Parawing will just flop on the water. Or you could ride it on the A lines, and if you let go, the Parawing is still going to be hovering, or it's just going to land, but it still holds a little bit more integrity that way. It doesn't just fully collapse. And then I think that's up to you with what type of safety you're after with the leash. Cool. Downwind frother. Awesome content, mate. Question: do you feel you would have preferred the 2.5 meter over the 3 meter as your stronger wind Parawing to complement your 4.2? Look, it's a tough one because, as we all know, the Parawings, they have a very narrow wind range. So where I am here, a good day is like a 20 knot sea breeze. And at 20 knots, I'm kind of capping out on the 4.2. If it goes 22 knots, 4.2 starts to get a little bit of a handful to stay upwind and go upwind. But I feel that the gap from the 4.2 to the 3 is quite good. 4.2 to the 2.5 would be too much of a gap, I think. So for example, on the 4.2 at 22 knots, I'm capping out. At 22 knots, I'm on the 3. I can definitely ride the 3. So I feel like I got it right when it comes to just, the sizes, and those are the sizes that were available, really. But in saying that, Flow is coming out now with the 2.5 and the 3.7, which will be really interesting. The 3.7 might be my go-to now, and the 2.5 might be my go-to, because also as you start improving your skills and getting better at it, I feel that you're going to be downscaling the sizes of your Parawing, as we all do with the wings, and it's very natural, like go that half size down. I think that will happen as well with the Parawings, but for now I'm still happy with the 4.2 and the 3, and I'll wait for the 2.5 and the 3.7 to arrive, which I have ordered because I just can't wait to try a 2.5 meter Parawing in like 30 knots. That is going to be just absolutely amazing. So I think, and just to clarify as well, I'm 82 kilos, give or take. So for your question, I'm thinking about 82 kilo range at a board that's 85 liters. So a 1-to-1 weight to volume ratio with all the gear and stuff. That's what I'm talking about. And then foil size, it really depends on the conditions. I'm probably 60% of the time I'm on the 980S from Code. And if it's a little bit lighter, I have the 1130, that's my biggest foil. And if it's, really cooking out there, the 850 or the 720 are my go-tos. Cool. Look, I think, oh no, we got one more question here. Okay, this is an interesting one. Can you make videos on tack versus jibes on the Parawing? It looks like opposite to winging. Tacks look simpler than jibing. Not sure. Tacks are not simpler than jibing. Tacks they're not super hard, but they're harder than jibing. So here's the technique for jibing, and what people get wrong with jibing is, they're riding with the Parawing in front of them, and then they're going to go jibe, and then they put the Parawing up. And on a kite, this is kind of how you turn. You put the kite up, and then you send it to the other side, and that's fine. With the Parawing, if you do that, everything happens a lot quicker in the Parawing. So if you send the Parawing up and ride towards it, it's going to fall on top of your head immediately. And look, we're talking about conditions that are good conditions to ride in, okay? Not like 12 knots. In 12 knots, maybe attack is better because you're going upwind, but it's not an easier move to master the tack. So to jibe properly, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be riding, and instead of sending it up, you want to keep it low, and you want to keep it in front of you, and all you want to do is twist it so the leading edge is pointing up, right? So you're going this way, you're riding, you twist the bar, but you still hold it down so it doesn't come up. And then once you do that, you initiate your turn downwind, and as soon as you're in that turn, you can twist the end of the bar, and it's going to go to the other side, and boom, it's going to start flying straight away. So the big thing with jibing is don't have it high, hold the Parawing low, hold it in the pressure zone, so you're going from just holding it like that, and once you hold it down like this, you do have to put pressure on the brake lines. You're actually, think about it that way, you're riding with speed, you're approaching a corner, you want to brake, so you brake and hold, and then when you're turning the corner, maybe at the apex, accelerate, so then you ride it on the front lines, and then you're twisting the bar to go the other way. For attacks are a lot more complicated. You have to manage your speed a lot more on attack. You have to be comfortable riding fast, because if you ride fast into the attack, you have enough power to go all the way around and then still have energy there to be on foil before the Parawing flies. But it's not an easier move. I think it's a move that if you master and you know how to do on a light wind day, I would go for attack versus a jibe, depending on the situation. But I don't think it's an easier move. Good question. That was from Sergio Diaz, SD. Cool. Look, those are all the questions I have for today. Again, have a look at the podcast. The designer of Ozone is coming on next. We have Steve Tobis talking about pretty much everything he learned from board size, getting up, sinker starting techniques, wave riding techniques. It was an episode filled with a lot of good content, a lot of good tips. I actually listened to it a couple times myself, and I'm like, oh my god, there's really good information in there. And I'm gonna post this on the Facebook group, so Parawinging Foil or something like that. I hope I'm getting it right. And if you have any further questions, just write it down in the comments, and I'll answer them next time. For the next Q&A. I'm not going to do these weekly because, God, it's so hard to get a weekly cadence. But as soon as I have 3 or 4 questions that are worth answering, I'll get this going. All right, talk soon, guys. Cheers.